So joining me now from Winnipeg is Hernan Popper. Thanks for being with the CJN Daily.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
On a sad occasion, which is a very important anniversary for people from Argentina. Let's go back a bit before we talk specifically about the bombing, and just tell us a little bit about what your life was like growing up in the Jewish community of Buenos Aires before the bombing. What was your family like? Did you go to school? What was the community like?
Yeah, well, I'd say we grew up in a Jewish family, traditional Jewish family, not really very attached to the religion, but much more attached to the tradition. Like we had our Jewish holidays, but we were not going to synagogue every week just for some special events. But all our family friends were part of the Jewish community. So it was our circle of pertinence.
And you would have gone to the Jewish Community Center or not? You weren't a member or used it? How was your relationship with that?
Actually, not the AMIA directly. I was a member of a synagogue, and I used to go to all the activities for youth and for teenagers. And I went to a lot of mahanes, like camping or day camps or night camps. So I was pretty connected that way, not specifically with AMIA. But of course, I had contacts with AMIA a couple of times because there were some special occasions that, well, you would go to AMIA or you would use their services as a Jew in Argentina.
So it was like, did it have a gym and a pool? And what did it have? Cafeteria?
No. That would be more
or
like
just the main, like Allianz type building?
It would be a little bit different. Like the AMIA was not a social club. There were a lot of different social clubs, like you had Hebraica and Akoach and Maccabi, like the what we would call the social clubs. And then you had the synagogues, but the AMIA was the one Jewish entity that would kind of get them all together and provide those services to the community that were not provided by the schools or by the social clubs or by the synagogues.
So it was like federations building type of thing for every Jewish country that has federation. Head offices of all the, Jewish family services and UJA, things like that.
So things like offering employment services or burial services or support for the elderly or like that kind of activities. Lots of social work. That was one of the most important pieces that they did.
And so 27 years ago, where were you and your family when the bomb went off?
Well, at that time, I was at work. I used to work with my family. We had a family business. And we were in Belgrano. That is a neighborhood that maybe is, I would say, 5 kilometers, maybe a little bit more, 10 kilometers away from the AMIA. And actually, we heard the bombing. We heard it even if we were that far away. And what's interesting is that at the time, it was just after the 1994 World Cup. And as you may know, Argentina is huge fan of soccer. That's the national game and everyone is huge about it. And well, it was just finished. So there was a TV set in every single restaurant, in every single bar, in every single work place. Everywhere you had a TV because just the day before that, when you were seeing the final of the World Cup. So for what's incredible, and today is not that unusual anymore, but at the time, the news just went absolutely viral and huge because we all had the TVs and the TV channels went to where the bombing happened and they started showing all the images of, well, all that situation live to everyone who was watching the TV. I don't know which is the right word, but horrible. I would say it was really, really unsettling because you could see every single building in that block with their crystals broken, and you could see people with blood on their faces walking around lost, not knowing really what was going on. And you could see, well, these cars coming and people trying to help, and there was no protocol on how to help. So people were trying to help the injured by grabbing them and taking them away from the rumble. So It was a very upsetting situation. And if you can find it, there's one TV scene that actually shows exactly the feeling of the time. There was, and I will never forget it, and I can assure you that anyone who saw that will never forget it. There was this piece of one story that was kind of hanging, and it was still hanging, but it was there, and you could see the firefighters working on trying to get people off the let's say the broken piece of building, and suddenly you can see this piece of floor just slowly starting to move, and you can hear the TV announcer yelling, "Get out, get out, get out," and you see how it falls on top of all the people who was working. I mean, it was, I remember that, and it's one of the saddest scenes I've seen in my life.
So how did this change your whole life and your family's life?
Well, that was not the first terrorist attack in Argentina. We had the bombing at the Israeli embassy, which really got us by surprise because we never had that kind of international terrorism in Argentina before. So when the Israeli embassy was bombed, I was working, that one, I don't recall what I was doing at the time, but suddenly—
You were 20, 21. It was 19.
Yeah, no, I don't recall. Possibly
you must have been 23, 24 when the bombing of AMIA happened. So you were 2 years younger.
How do I describe it? Both the bombing at the Israeli embassy and then the AMIA were kind of a realization that we were in danger, that we were not protected, and that there was a huge terrorist attack, and then there was another one. And it's like we felt really that there was no interest in solving the problem. And not only that, but also, well, it could happen anytime again. So it was a very unsettling situation. In Argentina, like everywhere else, there is quite a bit of anti-Semitism, well, that was just a confirmation that you couldn't be safe. And then you should imagine every synagogue starting building these concrete walls in front just in case. And then you start having security in every synagogue, school, social club, with police trying to prevent. So I would say that was one of those revelations that showed that it wasn't safe to be a Jew in Argentina.
But it took you a few years till you decided to move to Canada. You didn't come till like early 2000, right? So there was that period of time. What was going through your family's mind and your own mind at the time?
I would say, again, I was pretty young, but it was kind of a wound that wouldn't heal, an open wound that every year after knowing that it happened and there were no one to blame, or there was no one brought to justice, it's like it kept growing and growing. And instead of healing, it was just something that was pending, something that was unsaid. I would say when I decided to move to Canada was not because of that event, but that was one of the many stepping stones that actually made my wife and I make the decision to leave Buenos Aires and to come to Canada.
And again, let's talk about this wound that's not been closed because nobody's been brought to justice. Very few people have been brought to justice. Over the past few years, there have been assassination of the prosecutor Nisman, who was about to reveal all. In 2015, in 2019, there were about half a dozen government officials, judges, investigators who were convicted, but not the president, not Menem, not the vice president, Kirchner. And none of the Iranians who were suspected were brought to justice. How do you deal with this 27 years later when, like, what the hell?
Well, my personal way to deal with it is exactly what we are doing today. Kind of share what happened and not to just forget about it, because the worst scenario would be just we assume that nothing will be solved. There is so much in the game for those who are interested in the truth not really being revealed, that I don't think it's ever going to be solved. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't keep asking for, well, for as much help as possible to put as much pressure as possible on the government in order to stop hiding the truth and start really getting to the bottom of it. Now, you mentioned fiscal or prosecutor Nisman. How, just let me put you in situation. The guy came on a moment's notice from a trip in Europe. He was with his two daughters, and on a moment's notice, he said, I had to go back to Argentina. He flew, he went to a TV news show, and he told everything that he was going to say at the legislature, at the Senate, about what he knew about the terrorist attack. And he was going to present all the proofs that he had that it was a cover-up by the government. Now, he used to live in one of the most secure buildings, in one of the most secure areas in Buenos Aires. Someone got in there. They say that he committed suicide, but it was such a, I don't even know how to describe it, such a circus, what they did with the investigation, that it was completely clear that he was assassinated. And the problem is that not only he was assassinated, but it was another cover-up on that assassination. So let me just give you this tip of information. You know that in a Jewish cemetery, you could not bury someone who commits suicide. Well, he's in the same cemetery as my parents and all my grandparents and everyone who was in Argentina. And they buried him in the very first lot or plot, however it's called, next to the entrance. So everyone who walks into the cemetery, it's called La Tablada, will see his tomb. So that's just kind of showing, well, everyone should know about this. Everyone walking into the cemetery should know that he was killed because he was a Jew, that he was killed because he was going to unveil this cover-up by the many different governments in Argentina.
What do you think Canadians should understand about what they can do, what Canadian government can do, what Canadian people can do to keep the story alive, or to put pressure on the government to do what's right?
Well, I would say one of the reasons why we picked Winnipeg and why we picked Canada is because we feel safe here. But having said so, I would like to leave this idea that if it happened in Argentina, it could happen anywhere. And if we don't really find those who actually made this terrorist attack, they could do it anywhere else. And I don't think that it would be that easy here in Canada, but you need to find the truth, and you need to find those who were guilty, and you need to bring them to justice. I don't think that there is enough international pressure on the Argentinian government in order to keep finding the truth. But again, who is right now in power, the government or the party that is in government right now, it is the same government that signed this memorandum of understanding with Iran in order to, well, hide all the truth. So this government is never going to do anything. There are way too many interests and too much money and political influence in place that I'm absolutely sure that there's nothing that can be done because these people actually are still hiding all that information. Hopefully one day a different government with a different ethic standards will be in power and they will start asking the right questions. I don't know when that's going to happen. With regards
to Canada's airplane, not Canada's, but the Ukraine Airlines was shot down by the same people that did the bombing, right?
Yeah.
And Canada has a direct stake in dealing with terrorism from Iran, plus being from Jewish, so it was Israel. So it isn't something Canadians shouldn't be aware of, is my feeling. And I know that last year you were involved. In the online commemoration because of COVID. Everything had to be online compared to the way it's normally done. Can you tell us what happens in Argentina normally, how it's done in public, and what that means to see that? Because I know this year we can't because of social distancing, but what's it normally like?
Well, usually there will be a pretty large gathering in front of the new building at the AMIA. And in some cases, some of the politicians would show up. Of course, some of them would never show up, especially our president today, or our vice president, who used to be the president who signed that memorandum of understanding. I don't think they have any interest in actually supporting any kind of claim for justice. But my brother would be there, my sister would be there. Normal people like you and me would be there asking for justice. And different years, it's different. Each event is different. But again, I've been here for the last 18 years. So I am much more familiar with what's happening here in Winnipeg. And what I can tell you here in Winnipeg is that before COVID, every single year for July 18th, I don't know if you've been to the Bernie Theater in the Asper Jewish Community Campus. There's people sitting on
yes,
the stairs.
I spoke there actually.
Yeah, well, there's people sitting on the steps because there is not enough room for everyone who wants to be there. And we go there and we light the candles, or we have someone singing a song, and we have one politician speaking and one representative of the community. We had a lot of people, like Jim Carr came a couple of years ago. Like a lot of people actually came, and they always support that, let's say, that remembrance event. And it's not just Argentinian people that go to that event. There's a lot of committed Winnipeggers born and raised in Winnipeg who also go there in order to support the claim for justice.
I was told this year, I looked on the AMIA website, and it says that they're going to be doing a virtual way that people can upload their pictures of themselves, like on an Instagram or your own camera, and you can say, I am present. What is that significance of that phrase and how people say that every year in front of the doors?
Well, it's not exactly I'm present.
Hey, I'm sorry. Let's.
No. But
Estoy presente or something. I don't know exactly.
No, that's perfect. It's like they are here. It's about them. It's about the dead. They actually casualties and the people who were killed and injured. It's like they would say the name of each of the victims, and after that they would say, "I'm here." It's like when you are, how do you say in school, when you are calling all the names to see whether they are there or not. I'm here. Well, that's exactly what they say. So what happens is that you will hear the 85 or 86 names now, and after each name, you will hear presente, and everyone in that track would say presente. So that means they are still here with us.
You said 86. I don't know about that. Tell me about that.
Well, I added this man to it.
Oh, he's considered one of them now too? I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. And thank you so much for sharing your experiences with our audience at the CJN Daily.
My pleasure.